and holidays are part of Malaysia's multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. But behind the vibrant celebration and lavish feast lies a growing crisis.
Some people even try to refurbish or renovate the house, and this actually is not really an impulse buying, but more related to cultures or peer pressure.
Are cultural expectations pushing families into debt? Discover the cause of keeping tradition alive on Decimal Point. And social media has reshaped how Malaysians spend. That includes weddings and festivals. Today, showing status often means spending big and posting even bigger. Malaysia's household debt now stands at 1.63 trillion ringgit, 84.2% of GDP. How much is driven by cultural pressure to celebrate? We speak to an expert who explores the hidden cost of celebration. Prof, recently the Ministry of Finance reported that the Malaysian household debt at 1.6 trillion ringgit or 84.2% of GDP. What does this actually mean and how concerning is this figure, and what does it reveal about the financial health at a household level?
Yes, it is rather concerning considering that the household debt is actually higher than our federal government debt. And when you look into the statistic, the household debt ratio to GDP for Malaysia is among the highest among the Asian countries. So when we look into this household debt, what exactly it means? It means that our population, our people have easy access to financing, but this also means that they are highly over leveraged. And when you look into this kind of debt, this debt consisted mostly, I think, around 50% on the housing loan, and the rest consisted of personal loan as well as a credit card. When we look into the figure itself, it is rather worrying that the issue of repayment might eventually become an important one that we need to address, especially when we talk about those B40 and M40 groups that having had to have this kind of financing or loan to sustain their daily life.
Now, Prof, you mentioned about the low-income group earlier, the B40s. Now, in Malaysia, for Malaysians in general, we have numerous festive seasons, weddings, celebrations, and this could be grand affairs. So what does all these festivals, for example, Hari Raya, play in terms of financial stress, particularly targeting the low-income groups?
Yes, we Malaysians do love celebrating all kind of festivals. And especially nowadays, if you look at the major festival, for example, Hari Raya, actually inching forward or earlier to the early of the year, and this will coincide with other major holidays like Chinese New Year, like Christmas, and also we have the new school term opening. So, and of course, at the end of the year, people going for holiday as well. So when we look into all these festivals coming at this almost at the same time, and people need to celebrate and at least one of these festivals. So it's going to put some financial pressure on the household, especially those in the B40s. And we are talking about an annual event. And if they are not able to manage their financial before the next round of festivals, so it's going to put additional financial burden, and hence we have seen the incidence of many of these people within this group. It's not just B40, but including M40 resorted to taking new loan, additional loan, or taking extra credit for their credit card, and this is something that going to manifest in the situation in the future, where they will be unable to manage their financial properly and end up in bankruptcy.
Now, Prof, earlier you mentioned that Malaysia has one of the highest when it comes to household debt to GDP ratio. Could you possibly elaborate further on that?
Yes, when we look into the statistic, we are among the highest with regards to household debt to GDP ratio. South Korea actually higher than us. I think probably one of the highest as well. And we have seen the impact on their population. They even came up with that Squid Game show to illustrate the seriousness of the debt level of their people. And when we look into this, there must be a concern whether this is something that's going to affect the nation and its people when we have such a high debt compared to the GDP. Well, it depends on the GDP itself. If we have a high GDP and it's distributed evenly, fairly to the people, meaning everyone is earning a comfortable salary, the cost of living is affordable, meaning they can afford to have this additional debt because they have a surplus to their income, they have a disposable income. But if this GDP, even though it's high, but skewed toward just a small percentage of population, meaning that the rest of the population still earning a rather low salary and unable to have disposable income. So when talking about this ratio, so it's going to be kind of worrying, because this illustrated that even though the nation is prospering, but it's only benefiting just a small percentage of the population rather than the rest. We have even this term, YOLO, you only living once, or probably a fear of missing out, or FOMO.
Financial products like personal loans and credit cards, including buy now, pay later installment scheme, become part of the festive season's narrative. Now, Prof, earlier you mentioned about the low-income group, and the minimum wage in Malaysia is about 1,700 ringgit. Do Malaysians actually have enough to spend, especially in Malaysia? We have so many festive season.
Yes, when we look into the minimum wage itself, 1,700 ringgit is actually still low. When we look into the monthly expenditure for the household in Malaysia, and when we look across the states, it differs. For example, in Selangor, it's around 6,000 something, and in KL even higher, around 7,000 ringgit per month. And if you look at the minimum wage of 1,700, this is normally what the employer pay for their foreign workers. When we look into the median wage among the formal workers in Malaysia, it's about 2,700, meaning that 6 to 7 million workers actually earning 2,700 ringgit and below. And if you try to imagine this, if the husband and the wife both earning 2,700. So that's 5,400. So if they are living in Selangor or KL, they might be struggling. They might not even have that disposable income. They might resort to borrowings on monthly basis to cover the cost of living. And when the festival come, it is actually an additional expense that they have to bear. So when we look into the salary level itself, there are still much to be done with regards to trying to get investment that will bring in jobs that will give a more competitive salary so that the population can experience a better quality of life.
Now, Prof, earlier you mentioned about the festive season and how the household are spending. So I would like to ask, like, what in specific, like, they are spending on, what is driving the household spendings during Raya?
That includes us also, because we're talking about all the festivals. Well, we can imagine. We want new dress, new clothes for ourselves and the kids. Some people even try to refurbish or renovate or replenish their house themselves with the additional new gadgets, or sometimes even resorting to buying cars, a new sofa and everything. And this actually is not really an impulse buying, but more related to cultures or peer pressure. We are more now than ever being influenced by what's happening surrounding us when we log in into a social media platform where it become a norm, it become a must, that it will be abnormal if we didn't spend on this thing. And this is something that has been affecting the population and doesn't exclude the B40 and 40s. And when we're talking about everything can be easily obtainable nowadays, when we're talking about easy access to loan or money, and the fact that we can instantly gratify ourselves, what we call instant gratification, just by a tap or fingers on the phone, we can get things that we want. So spending during festivals become something that's natural for us, without us thinking about the implication of paying it back or impact to our savings or even on our financial well-being. So when we look into all this happening surrounding us, it's not because we are not aware, we do not know what it's going to cost us when we start to spend on this thing, but it's rather something that probably becoming more like a psychological, social factor that influence the spending behavior of the population. And it is something that we have to address sooner or later, because this kind of spending is not sustainable to the household, to the population, even to the nation.
Now, Professor, earlier you mentioned social media and peer pressure. I think I would like to ask you more on that. Nowadays we have so many social media influencers, and how do they play a role in driving consumerism? And earlier you also mentioned about credit cards. Could we actually talk more about the buy now, pay later? I think that's more relevant in our scenario. And I'm like a Chindian, so I celebrate Chinese New Year, Deepawali, Thai Pusam, and for me, even Chinese New Year is about 15 days. So for you, it might be a month. So could you tell us a little bit more on that?
Yes, we're talking about the household debt. Of course, traditionally, we look into the type of debt consisted of housing loan, personal loan, car loan, as well as the credit card. But there's now an emerging trend. There's an additional access to financing, what you call a buy now, pay later. The amount, when you compare the amount of so-called loan that the people took under buy now, pay later compared to the another type of credit, like the personal loan and credit card, still small. But the rate of adoption, the rate is actually increasing quite tremendously year by year. So much so that the government also taking notice into this and going to come up with a new act to control this kind of financing option, because it does not fall under the financing institution but rather with the retailers. So, and this is also something that going to become a serious problem, because imagine if you having a personal loan, for example, and then you also have buy now pay later, but the impact of having that kind of commitment will eventually affect your obligation to pay on a monthly basis this other loan, and this is going to force you into bankruptcy. Even though the threshold for bankruptcy at the moment is about 100,000 ringgit, when we look into the scenario in Malaysia when we have many festivals and people start to spend, being influenced by the YouTuber or influencer, some of these people that went through all these social media are the young people. They have yet to had enough saving. Some actually children, but they can also the one that influencing their parents to spend. Even though they are the end user, they are not necessarily the one who paying for it. So the parents are now actually giving more or paying for what the children want compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago. And when we see the situation where the young people who already or just started their work but do not have enough saving, but had to start spending to keep up, basically, to keep up with the peer pressure, to be seen that they are following the latest status. So we have this kind of situation where the population no longer have enough saving, depleted saving in fact, and rising debt that remain unseen until it's too late, because the fact that they are not taking credit card or personal loan, but they having all this buy now pay later that are going to force them to pay in a penalty or higher fee if they are unable to follow the schedule of payment. And this is something that when we look overall, the festivals become the catalyst for this household to have an accelerated amount of indebtedness. And how do we manage this? How do we ensure that they're not going to be trapped into this kind of situation, this debt situation? So it's all from the mindset. It's all coming from within. When we look into our knowledge on personal financial management, Ministry of Finance even stated that the level of financial proficiency is very low. It's about, I think, like less than 40%. And when we look into this situation, when the school children, the university students, they are not really exposed to personal financial management, it's no wonder that when we didn't even talk about scam even. When people, they are careful with their money, they're not spending, and yet they still lose their money to these scammers who manage to convince them via a very sophisticated method of trickery, which they could prevent, they could stop it if they have enough level of understanding on how to manage their financials.
Right, Professor, when you talk about scammers in specific, right, don't you think that is because Malaysians want an easy way out? I mean, earlier we mentioned about living above their means, spending more than what they have, or they don't even have enough or sufficient savings, but yet they spend more. So don't you think that is actually the reason why Malaysians are falling into debts or falling into the tricks of scammers?
Well, we are being exposed on daily basis, if not on hourly basis, that when that successful people are those who own all this stuff, big houses, big cars, nice dresses and branded item. And this is when we are being exposed to this continuously. So it somehow set into our mind that it is something that we need to have now. We have even this term, YOLO, you only living once, or probably fear of missing out, FOMO. They even have this kind of acronym to describe what's happening now. And we don't have this 30, 40 years ago, during our parents or grandparents, they are willing to wait, they are willing to save, they have this delay gratification. But nowadays, we cannot simply blame the young people and the children. The technology somehow enabled this to happen, but it's only happened to a select few people. We've been bombarded by all this consumerism and I would say capitalism that I hope the government, the parent, the school, everyone put their arms together to help the population to realize that not everything you see right now on the social media
we must buy
or even buy now pay later.
That's indeed very, very true, Prof.
First, we need to have a better understanding, knowledge on how to manage our personal financial. We need to learn from the trusted sources, not simply from our relative or close friends.
Many Malaysians receive financial aid like Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah and Bantuan Sara Hidup, yet challenges persist. Why is cash assistance alone not good enough to solve households' financial struggles? Now, Prof, with a total allocation of 13 billion ringgit in Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah as well as Bantuan Sara Hidup in 2025, how impactful is this assistance in addressing cost of living struggles?
Yeah, when we look into the amount itself, that 30 million seems huge. But when we look whether this is going to have an impact on the GDP of the country, it's quite minimum actually. But the point is that 13 billion they do going to help the affected groups, especially the recipients, because they are facing a continuous uphill battle against the cost of living. And when we're talking about the stagnating salary, the rising cost of living, they face the situation where there will be a situation where on monthly basis they do not have enough income to support daily expenses. So Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah STR do provide such relief, especially when we also look into the SARA, where they can get the monthly cash benefit. So this can also address their daily cost of living and eventually will help them to have a better quality of life.
Now, Prof, aside from cash or food aid, how can the Malaysian government help the people in terms of long-term financial security?
The Malaysian government need to come up with various initiatives or measures, such as providing the upskilling or reskilling to the population, the working population, so that they can get a better salary that offer a better quality of life to the household. At the same time, when we look into we are actually currently in a debt-based economy. It seems that whatever we want to do, whether to get a house, to plan our life, like getting married, we have to take up a loan and from the financial institution. But this is not necessarily the lifestyle or the way to live our life. Government should also explore alternative to debt-based economy, alternative to financing that not necessarily get the population into debt, but more on how they can get access to all these product or services that they need, but not necessarily plunging them into this kind of situation where a majority of the household are having a high level of debt.
Now, Prof, I want to bring it back to the festive season. What ways, can family take, to prevent themselves from falling into a debt trap?
Well, it must start from ourselves. Well, we need to have a discipline. We need to plan ahead. but it's easier said than done. We have our New Year resolution. How many of us managed to keep up with the kind of resolution? Similarly, we have festivals on an annual basis. So how do we discipline ourselves? So first, we need to have a better understanding, knowledge on how to manage our personal financial. We need to learn from the trusted sources, not simply from our relative or close friends, on how to better manage our saving or our income, because we don't want to save money just to fall trapped into the scam or any unproven or unlicensed investment. So what we need to do to have this kind of financial literacy, to keep doing research on what exactly we can do with our saving. But of course, I'm not saying we cannot spend at all, but we need to spend within our limit. And by that, it's not necessarily following the trend. We can plan ahead. We can try to structure, or we have to delay some of the purchases, not necessarily at the same time. Although we do have that kind of installment, but only when we have calculated our total income over expenses on monthly basis. If you can increase your income by getting additional source through, some people, they tend to have multiple jobs. As long as it doesn't affect your lifestyle or personal health, it's okay. But for most of us, what is important is to plan ahead, to manage our expenses, only spend on what necessary, and never ever been influenced by our peers or what social media is advocating. We need to look within our means and see which one actually more important, rather than focusing on the need rather than the want.
There's a growing message about celebrating Raya, weddings and festivals in humility, gratitude and togetherness, not extravagance. It is about peace of mind, not keeping up appearances. Celebrating simplicity and family values can protect families from unnecessary financial stress. Join us next time for smarter financial choices on Decimal Point.